Grounded flight exposes amazing injustice. Black CEOs, seats stolen, unseen. Truths transform lives. Maya Johnson stared at the corporate announcement, disbelief washing over her like a cold wave. The name embedded in the gleaming header felt surreal. Jonathan Wells, a longtime family friend of the chairman, had been handed her long-deserved promotion. She clenched her fists. It was not just a lost title. It was years of toil, ambition, and the heavy weight of her father's legacy being erased in a blink. This was more than a corporate misstep. It was the latest chapter in a long, painful history she thought had changed. Her heart raced, bubbling with anger and disappointment. The stories her father used to tell echoed in her mind, tales of fighting against an unforgiving system that never gave him a fair shot. He flew with the eagles, but the ground beneath him was littered with roadblocks. With every tale shared at their kitchen table, he instilled values of courage and justice. Fight for what's right, Maya, no matter the cost, but be ready for the fight of your life, he would say. Those words rang louder now than they had during her childhood. How were her dreams extinguished by privilege so blatant, so vile? Grappling with the unfairness, she felt the ghost of doubt creep back into her mind, whispering the fears she thought she had silenced. Was she strong enough to belong in this world? Did her achievements even matter? She took a deep breath, her muscles tensed. Maya had always known that her race would be a whisper against the roaring engines of those who thought they had inherited their position, but this was more than she could bear. She refused to let it break her. Before she could spiral further, a thought snapped into focus. Action. If she could not win through merit, she could turn the lens back onto the very system that spurned her. Diving deep into her investigation, she began to sift through records, meetings, and emails, her each click echoing the hard choices of her father. The narrative surrounding her promotion had begun to morph in ugly ways, as she uncovered biases tucked away in memo documents and tentative remarks by board members, each unveiling a complex tapestry of privilege woven into the organization. Her nightly meetings with Ruth, a fierce elder in the community, started to bring her clarity. Sitting across from the older woman in her cramped yet vibrant office, Maya soaked in Ruth's wisdom and fierce resolve. "Child, this fight runs deeper than any one of us," Ruth would say, the strength in her words wrapping around Maya like a protective cloak. Yet, as they dug through history, Maya felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her chest. If she exposed these entrenched injustices, would it end low, or would it result in the fragility of her own hard-won position? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Maya confronted a paradox that tore at her soul. Each inch toward justice felt like a step away from her dream. Her heart ached as she weighed her career against what was right. The psychological storm heightened. In this moment of grasping truth, she peered through the wreckage of shattered hopes and breathed in the potential of fighting for not just herself, but for those who came before her. It was in that moment of despair she realized how intertwined her legacy was with those she hoped to uplift. Standing on the precipice of this life-altering decision, a fragmented thought shot through her. What if this was bigger than her? What would her father think of her now? This urgency quelled her fear, but illuminated the truth she'd been avoiding. There, in the echoes of her family's sacrifice, lay the fire needed to confront the smoldering injustices of corporate America, the very foundation that had fired the first shot in her battle. With newfound strength coiling in her gut and adrenaline coursing through her veins, Maya braced herself. The real battle was about to begin. Maya pored over the documents spread out across her dining table, the faint blue light from her laptop casting a harsh glow over the pages. Hours turned into days as she meticulously pieced together patterns of exclusion and discrimination within the company. The weight of hidden truths bore down on her, yet each discovery ignited a flicker of defiance within. She could use this knowledge, turn the raw evidence against those who perpetuated the inequality she had faced. Ruth had affirmed her potential during one of their late-night sessions. "Your fight is soaring high, Maya, but you must remember every storm, every shaking tree holds a truth," Ruth said, her piercing eyes fixed on Maya. "And your truth is powerful." As Maya repeated Ruth's words in her mind, she felt that flicker transforming into a fervent blaze. She wasn't just digging for her justice, she was unearthing a broader truth that could demand accountability from those in power. But with this resolve surfaced an unsettling thought. What if the fire she was igniting burned her in return? She had fought her entire life to establish her worth and career. What if exposing the unfairness meant losing everything she had built? Anxiety twisted at her stomach, threatening to extinguish her flame. Yet the idea of standing silently by while another Jonathan Wells snatched a place without merit was unacceptable. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was claiming space for everyone whose potential had been sidelined. In the following days, Maya approached her investigation with a calculated approach. She attended high-level meetings under the plush veneer of camaraderie, sipping coffee amidst boardroom chatter. Each remark around the table felt like a noose tightening around her ambitions. Yet she smiled and nodded, carefully observing nuances and noting discrepancies. The more information she gathered, the clearer her strategy became. With the right data, she could confront the powers that be, not just with anger, but with undeniable evidence. But this wasn't simply about tactics. It was a fight steeped in emotion and legacy. Walking past her father's old photographs in the hallway, she was reminded of the dreams that had been snuffed out before they could materialize. This was not just her fight, it was a collective cry for fairness. Each photograph felt like a call to arms, pushing her to gather strength from their shared history. Weeks later, sitting at her desk, Maya finally set to drafting a statement. It would articulate her findings, illuminating the exclusionary practices that shrouded corporate decisions. But as she typed, a wave of uncertainty crashed over her. Was she prepared for the backlash? The truth was a double-edged sword. It could bring liberation, or it could cost her everything. Her fingers stilled over the keyboard. In that moment of hesitation, doubt curled itself around her heart. But the juxtaposition between her fear and her drive became starkly evident. To move forward, she had to firmly grasp the essence of her own voice. If she was going to expose injustice, it had to be done boldly. She summoned the resolve she had cultivated in secret, her father's voice echoing, "Fight for what's right." With clarity cutting through her hesitations, she pressed send. As the email shot into the corporate ether, Maya felt a rippling sense of empowerment wash over her, tempered by a sobering awareness of what lay ahead. Yet, amid this burgeoning confidence, there was an enigma looming over her. How would those at the top respond? The boardroom she had observed so closely was about to face its reckoning. Counting on her instincts, Maya steeled herself for the confrontation she had inadvertently summoned. The winds of change were stirring, and she was ready to see how far they would blow. But the next step was now glaringly clear. She would have to prepare for war, a contest not just for her own future, but for the countless voices subdued in the shadows. Would she emerge empowered, finally claiming her rightful place? Or would she become yet another casualty, lost among the labyrinthine corporate machinations? The moment of reckoning was approaching, and with it, the truth would surface once and for all. Maya awoke to the rattling of her alarm, a familiar sound that felt foreign today, charged with an electric anticipation. The weight of her decision from the previous night settled uneasily in her chest, a tangible reminder of the turmoil she had unleashed. Today was no ordinary workday. Today she would watch the repercussions of her bold act unfold. Sipping her lukewarm coffee, she paced her apartment, replaying her email in her mind. The message had sent ripples through the organization, both a catalyst and a confrontation of the long-standing injustices she had uncovered. Each step towards her office felt like an escalation, the air dense with unspoken questions and fear, a stark contrast to the complacency she had once felt in those boardroom meetings. Would her colleagues support her, or would they shun her, branding her a troublemaker? As she entered the building, Maya's pulse quickened. The clamor of the corporate world blurred around her, a cacophony of chatter, laughter, and the staccato rhythm of heels echoing against the marbled floors. She braced herself for the day's inevitable conversations, her instincts finely tuned to detect tension lurking beneath the surface. Maya passed by the reception area, where a cluster of employees had gathered, engaged in hushed discussions. Their glances flicked to her, eyes darting away at her approach. She fought against the tightening knot in her stomach, reminding herself of the cause for which she had risked so much. Digging deep, she strengthened her resolve, holding her head high as she made her way to her office. But her sanctuary offered no solace. As she settled at her desk, the floodgates opened. Executives began pouring in, one by one, summoning her to discuss the content of her email. The first was her manager, Laura, whose typically inviting demeanor had shifted. It was a delicate balance, the air thick with guardedness. "Maya, I think we need to talk," Laura began, her voice measured. "Your findings have raised serious questions about the department's practices." "Serious questions," Maya echoed, her heart racing. "They need to be addressed. We can't pretend that everything's fine here." Laura's face tightened. "It's not just about addressing issues, it's about how we address them. This isn't just some academic matter. There are consequences." Consequences. The word hung between them like a boulder. Maya met Laura's gaze, steel replacing uncertainty. "I didn't set out to rattle cages, but it's time we talked about what's been hidden." Their conversation spiraled into a complex web of arguments and counter-arguments, pushing Maya to advocate for the very changes that had long eluded her. Each assertion she made was an affirmation of her growing confidence, and as she challenged each of Laura's reservations, she sensed pieces of her old self chipping away. "Maya, if you want this to go any further, you need to prepare for the pushback," Laura warned, her tone shifting from concern to caution. "Corporate culture doesn't like upheaval. There will be individuals who will see this as personal." There it was again, the fear. But now it was accompanied by the knowledge of her truth. The clash of feelings within her became the backdrop for the unfolding drama. As Laura exited, Maya remained seated, absorbing the gravity of her actions. The day wore on, and each meeting only deepened Maya's resolve. Words that had once been powerless were transforming into a force she wielded with newfound authority. As difficult conversations occurred, she encountered allies, others who were inspired. But she also met skeptics, their apprehension a stark reminder of the divide she sought to bridge. Later in the evening, as she gathered her things to leave, the corporate environment felt both familiar and alien. The path ahead was unpredictable, yet it flowed through an exhilarating state, a blend of vulnerability and empowerment. With every encounter, she was reawakening parts of herself once dulled by apathy, pushing against the chains that had bound her to a space that didn't reflect who she was or who she aspired to become. As she reached the elevator, a message pinged on her phone. It was from Ruth, simple but charged. "The storm is building. Are you ready for round 2? Maya hesitated. With the winds of change behind her, she realized the real battle was just beginning. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the unknown ahead. Would the ones at the top see her as a threat, or could they become part of the solution? The stage was set. It was time to confront not just the resistance ahead, but her own evolving identity in this high-stakes conflict. The moment of confrontation loomed ever closer, and Maya could feel its inevitability pulsating in the air. Would she find allies where she least expected, or would her courage turn into a solitary flame amidst a storm? Maya's phone buzzed again, snapping her out of the reverie that followed her conversation with Laura. Ruth's words echoed in her mind. The storm was indeed building, but she had initiated this tempest. It was time to confront not only the external opposition, but the voices of doubt swirling within her. Determined to harness this surge of energy, she headed to her office one more time. The familiar scent of polished wood mixed with the sharp tang of desk supplies provided an oddly comforting backdrop as she sat down and pulled up her notes. The findings she had crafted would be crucial for the continued dialogue. Sifting through data, Maya noted the discrepancies in department metrics. feeling more empowered with every statistic she analyzed. It dawned on her, the facts didn't lie. The pushback, the anxiety in Laura's eyes, it had all stemmed from a fear of exposure. This wasn't just about her, it was about the integrity of the entire organization. She felt her heart race at the thought of standing firm against the facade she had once quietly accepted. The following morning, as she stepped into the office, the atmosphere crackled with energy. Muted conversations ignited by speculative curiosity followed her. It was unsettling, yet invigorating. She wasn't just on the periphery of change, she was at its epicenter. With each step toward the conference room, her mind spun with strategies. Maya was met with a gathering of senior executives. They spoke in hushes, stealing glances that often landed on her, piercing through layers of politeness. "This can't be ignored," she would say later, her voice firm but steady. "The metrics are clear, and we owe it to ourselves and to the organization to take responsibility." When it was her turn to present, she could feel the energy shift. Their skepticism morphed into reluctant interest as she unveiled her findings. The data she had pored over seemed to trigger an internal reckoning within the room. A wave of tension washed over her as she seized the moment. She didn't just present data, she contextualized it within their shared mission. This was about ethics, about leadership that came with accountability. As she spoke, something within her clicked. This was her space, not merely a job title. She was reclaiming her authority. But the space was not entirely hers. A senior executive, Mark, shot up with a counter-argument. His voice dripped with condescension as he questioned Maya's interpretation. The weight of everyone's eyes bore down on her. This was it, a deliberate attack masked as rational discourse. "There are always alternative explanations," he said, his brow furrowed in feigned concern. Maya's pulse quickened, but she remained poised, her thoughts racing. Did she succumb to his authority, or did she counter with the confidence she had been cultivating? The stakes had never felt higher. Taking a breath, she presented an alternative perspective, articulating how systemic patterns often intertwined. It was a calculated risk, one she had not anticipated taking. As she finished, the silence was suffocating. Yet she felt a shift. She was not the only one in the room grappling with this tug-of-war. Other executives shifted in their seats, their expressions morphing from dismissal into contemplation. Had she planted a seed of doubt in their convictions? With her heart pounding, a mix of adrenaline and anxiety, Maya realized this was more than a professional battleground. It was a personal one, too. In this moment of confrontation, she was not just fighting for change. She was reclaiming her identity and asserting her voice in a way she had never dared before. As the meeting concluded, a few colleagues approached her, their words warm and affirming. Yet there remained a palpable fracture. The battle lines were drawn. Would Mark and those like him regroup, or would Maya catalyze a shift in the corporate culture? Just as she began to process the hesitant optimism around her, another message pinged on her phone, this time from Laura. "We need to talk. I have some people I want you to meet." A surge of uncertainty coursed through her. For every ally, there seemed to be an equal adversary. The landscape was shifting, but it was still fraught with tension. Would this conversation fortify her efforts or expose her vulnerabilities even further? As she prepared to meet Laura, a question hung heavily in the air. How far was she willing to ride this wave of truth into an unpredictable future? As Maya approached Laura's office, a mix of apprehension and determination churned in her stomach. She understood the stakes had climbed exponentially since her last encounter with the executives. What could Laura possibly unveil that would further change the landscape? The thought prompted a flash of doubt. Had she truly steeled herself for what lay ahead, or was she edging closer to perilous overreach? Displaying a calm facade, Maya knocked lightly before entering. The office was sunlit, filled with the aroma of fresh coffee, and effectively an oasis amidst the corporate storm brewing outside. Laura sat behind her desk, fidgeting with a stack of documents, but looked up with an encouraging smile that momentarily eased Maya's tension. "Maya, thank you for coming," Laura said, gesturing towards a chair. "I've been hearing great things about your presentation. Most of the feedback has been positive, apart from a few dissenting voices." "Mark," Maya replied, her tone flat. A hint of annoyance flickered in her chest. Was it predictable that self-preservation would serve to ignite further conflict? Exactly, Laura said, nodding in agreement. Her expression hardened slightly. He has influence within the board and with several executives who are sympathetic to his traditionalist views. So, here's why I called you in. She took a deep breath, moving papers aside to reveal a dossier. This is about our organization and the changes in leadership structure that are being discussed behind closed doors. Maya leaned in, her curiosity piqued. What do you mean? There's a possibility that Mark might propose a new initiative focusing on restoring corporate values, as he puts it, Laura replied. But what that really means is a regression, a push against transparency, and a reinforcement of outdated practices that could derail your momentum. Maya's heart raced, each beat drumming to the tune of urgency. Was this what they meant to do now? To retreat just as she had mustered the strength to advance? Fists clenched under the table, she recognized the magnitude of the impending battle. We can't let that happen. The words escaped her, a spontaneous burst of resolve. Oh, but there's more, Laura continued, her expression serious. The pushback isn't solely coming from Mark. There's a faction within the team, a set of powerful individuals questioning your findings. They fear a loss of control, or worse, loss of status. A surge of anger coursed through Maya, a reminder of her earlier fear of exposure. The layers of resistance she would have to navigate began feeling insurmountable yet, strangely, defining. The truth was beginning to crystallize. She had to be unyielding if she hoped to dismantle the very barriers that had long stifled her. What do we do? Maya asked, her voice steadier, revealing her willingness to tackle the challenges ahead. If they're setting the groundwork for another rollback, we can't leave it unchallenged. At that moment, Laura handed her the dossier. I want to introduce you to a few key allies who share your vision. They're the ones who can bolster your voice and facilitate the change we need. Maya opened the folder, skimming over notes and names. Mixed feelings surged. This could be a significant turning point, but the responsibilities that came with it loomed heavily. She glanced at Laura, an unspoken agreement sparking between them. The time for passive observation had passed. Action was now the only option. Let's do this, Maya affirmed, her pulse steadying into a rhythm of finality. Yet, as the excitement simmered within her, an ominous thought lingered. While allies were pivotal, opposition could also spark from unexpected sources. Who else might rise from the shadows to threaten her ambitions? An unsettling realization washed over her. Trust was not an absolute resource, and each move she made could unleash further ripples in this tumultuous sea. The conflict was far from over. It was only just unfolding. How did she strike the balance between aggression and strategy in this corporate chess match? Exhaling slowly, she faced Laura with renewed purpose. They were set to dismantle the layers of comfort that shielded the status quo. But as she prepared for this journey, a nagging question persisted. Was she truly ready for the consequences of her quest for truth? In the days that followed her meeting with Laura, Maya's sense of urgency evolved into a fierce determination. She delved deeply into the dossier, memorizing names and strategies, interpreting each recommendation as a thread in a larger tapestry she was now weaving. The prospect of introducing innovative changes to the organization felt less scary and more exhilarating. Every name she noted resonated with the promise of collaboration, igniting sparks of hope amidst the doubts clawing at the edges of her mind. But the apprehension persisted. As the hours turned into days, Maya began pondering her inherent strength and how it aligned with the challenges ahead. Past experiences of self-doubt loomed large, and with every discussion about lethal corporate politics, she could feel those ghosts whispering their warnings. She had always been adaptable, inherently cooperative, yet here she was, poised to clash significantly with established powers. Maya's first tactic was clear: gather as much information as possible about her potential allies. She reached out to them one by one, carefully crafting her approach to ensure transparency, while simultaneously safeguarding her vulnerable ambitions. Each interaction revealed hidden reservoirs of wisdom and resilience. They had their own battles against a culture designed to crush innovation and foster mediocrity, yet they were driven by purpose. This newfound camaraderie began to seep into Maya's confidence, transforming her perspective on leadership from one of fear to one of shared vision. One particular meeting stood out. Maya found herself seated across from Michael, a veteran analyst known for his keen insight and experience within the company. They exchanged ideas that flowed freely. His skepticism softened while she shared her vision with palpable enthusiasm. "Innovation isn't merely a good idea, it's essential for survival," she stated assertively, observing the flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "Bold words," he replied, a hint of admiration in his tone. "The current can be unforgiving. But tell me, what makes you believe the team is ready to embrace change?" Maya paused, every word heavy with significance. She realized now that the challenge she faced wasn't just about changing minds. It was about transforming a culture that thrived on subjugation. Because the outcome we've been cultivating doesn't just improve our workflow, it democratizes power. Change can't only be for an elite few, it must be for everyone. Michael leaned back, clearly affected by her insight. Maya felt a rush of validation as he nodded. "You might just be onto something." It was a small victory, but it fortified her belief that she could reshape the team's future. As the week progressed, Maya focused on devising a series of meetings with her allies. They meticulously planned their approach, discussing not only strategies to counter Mark, but also ways to proactively create a narrative that would capture the board's attention in a constructive light. The air was thick with determination, the kind that stoked the embers of her resolve. However, doubt still slithered within the depths of her mind, a persistent reminder of the uncertainties ahead. What if Mark initiated preemptive strikes to undermine her efforts before they even began? What if loyalties shifted as the winds of influence changed? In the midst of her strategizing, a text from Laura struck her like a thunderbolt. "We need to meet. I have some information that could change everything." Maya's heart raced at the potential volatility of that meeting. She exchanged the comfort of camaraderie for the unpredictable chaos of unfolding events. Clenching her hands, she steeled herself for whatever revelation awaited her. How many more layers of hidden truths would surface before the final skirmish? As she prepared to face the unknown, she felt the weight of impending conflict settle heavily on her shoulders. There was no turning back now. The fight for her vision was about to become intensely personal. Would she be able to navigate this sprawling web of alliances and adversaries? The time had come to confront the shadows, to unveil hidden truths behind the familiar smiles and social niceties. Maya took a deep breath, readying herself for whatever awaited her in the next meeting. The candle of her resolve burned brighter than ever. Confrontation was no longer a distant possibility, but an immediate reality. What secrets did Laura hold that could either fortify her efforts or threaten everything she had worked to build? The uncertainty hung thick in the air, the room poised on the edge of change. Maya arrived at the cafe Laura suggested, the air heavy with expectation. Bright overhead lights illuminated the small table where Laura sat, her expression betraying a mix of urgency and anxiety. Maya took a seat and noticed the way her friend nervously drummed her fingers on the table. A telltale sign something profound weighed heavily on her mind. "Maya, thanks for coming," Laura began, her voice a whisper, as if sensing the gravity of their conversation could draw unwanted attention. "I've been digging deeper into the dynamics of the organization. What I've uncovered is complicated." Maya leaned in, the quickening of her heart betraying her calm facade. She wondered where this conversation would lead. Each piece of information could either cement her plans or derail them entirely. "Remember I mentioned those closed-door meetings Mark has been having with the board?" Laura paused, gauging Maya's response. "I found a pattern. These meetings aren't just casual discussions. They're strategizing around you, targeting your initiatives directly." A chill cascaded down Maya's spine. Mark was not just another obstacle. He was wielding influence that could cripple her nascent movement. "What exactly do they want?" Maya asked, struggling to maintain her composure. Laura exhaled sharply, the words tumbling out in a rush. "They want to make sure that your ideas are presented in a way that undermines their validity. If they frame you as inexperienced or as a disruptor without a clear plan, They can justify blocking your proposals under the guise of stable leadership. The revelation pressed heavily on Maya's chest. This wasn't just corporate maneuvering. It felt like a personal attack. The gravity of the betrayal anchored her thoughts. It was a reminder that she was threatening a comforted status quo. But from deep inside, a flicker of determination ignited. Would she just allow her ideas to be crushed by underhanded tactics? "Laura, we need a counter-strategy," Maya asserted, her voice growing more resolute. "We've got to articulate our vision clearly and gather support from those who believe in it. If the narrative shifts, we can reframe their tactics against them." Laura nodded, her trepidation giving way to a hint of excitement. "That's the spirit, but we also need to keep our cards close to our chest. If Mark gets wind of anything we're planning, he'll twist it against us." The challenge posed a tantalizing dilemma that tugged at Maya's professional instincts. Staying proactive meant revealing parts of her strategy to those who might falter under pressure. But withholding information felt counterproductive. She had to decide how much trust she could bestow on her allies, all while navigating a sea of competing interests. As they closed their meeting, a renewed sense of purpose enveloped Maya. The shadows of doubt lingered, but they no longer threatened to overtake her resolve. Instead, they became a part of her formula for success. Suddenly, Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. Another text, but this time from an unknown number. "Do you want to know the true magnitude of what's happening? Meet me tomorrow at 9 a.m., same place." A surge of unease washed over her. Who was this? And why now? Was this another game being played at her expense, or an opportunity she desperately needed? Maya resolved to find out. She had reached a turning point where her personal growth intertwined with the storm brewing within her organization. Every decision pressed against the walls of her determination, and the uncertainty laid bare new thresholds she must cross, even if it tested her most fundamental beliefs. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the unknown pull at her once more. There was much at stake, and the next day beckoned with a promise of dangerous revelations. She would need to brace herself for whatever truth awaited at the intersection of loyalty, ambition, and inevitable confrontation, as the stakes climbed higher than she had ever anticipated. The following morning, the cafe buzzed with a faint hum of busy conversations and the clinking of porcelain cups, but Maya felt cocooned in her own reverberating thoughts as she waited. The minutes stretched, thick with unknowing, while anticipation clung to her skin. Each tick of the clock pricked her nerves and sharpened her focus on what lay ahead. Who had reached out to her, and what trap might be waiting at the end of this invitation? When the door swung open, a gust of fresh air cascaded inside, carrying with it a figure that Maya recognized only too well. Mia, an old colleague from her early days in the corporation. She hadn't crossed paths with Mia for years, a choice that felt more deliberate than coincidental. Maya was more than just surprised. She was taken aback by the rush of emotional complexity that washed over her. "Maya," Mia greeted, a mixture of warmth and wariness coloring her familiar smile. There was an immediate tension, an unspoken history between them. "Mia," Maya replied, the gravity of the situation settling deeper as they took a seat in the far corner of the cafe, one where they could speak discreetly. "What's going on? Why have you reached out now?" Mia leaned in, her voice lowered to a conspiratorial tone. "I've been hearing things that could fundamentally change everything for you. It's not just Mark's influence or the board's tactics. There's something much larger in play, and you need to be informed." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, nudging Maya's heart rate to quicken. This wasn't merely about departmental sabotage. It could be about the organization's integrity itself. "What do you mean?" "It's about the funding and the way it's being allocated," Mia continued, her expression turning serious. "Mark has a personal interest in sidelining your initiatives because they threaten a larger hidden agenda. There's a whole strategy that goes beyond mere favoritism. He's been instrumental in reshaping priorities to favor long-standing agreements with partners he's personally invested in." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The erratic behavior of the board, the secret meetings, and Mark's urgency to neutralize her ideas, all were converging around this unseen network of influence. It wasn't just office politics. It was a pernicious blend of ambition and greed. "How do you know all this? Why now?" Maya asked, struggling to maintain her composure. The need for clarity was urgent, and she was determined to understand the depth of this revelation. I felt responsible, Mia admitted, her voice shaking slightly. I passed through the inner circle, and I didn't say anything because I feared the repercussions. But the longer I stayed quiet, the more complicit I felt. I realized that I might lose everything if I didn't speak up. And you are the only one who could challenge this. There was desperation in Mia's eyes, a reflection of the turmoil that resonated within Maya herself. This was a moment of reckoning for them both. Maya's instinct kicked in, the need to harness this information to not only survive but to emerge stronger. I appreciate your courage, Maya said, her voice steadying as determination once again sparked within her. But we need an actionable plan. How do I turn this knowledge into power? Mia launched into a series of strategies, including gathering key players who could ally with Maya's vision and exposing the deceit woven into their organization's fabric. Each suggestion was met with Maya's nods of understanding, as more ideas flowed and possibilities opened. As they plotted their response, Maya felt a shift not just in her approach, but within herself. Here was an opportunity not just to push back against Mark, but to lay the groundwork for a more transparent, ethical future within her company. Yet as urgency pulsed through her, a cloud of uncertainty remained. Whom could she trust within this maze of loyalties and hidden motives? The meeting ended, but Maya's brain whirred with an overwhelming complexity of emotions. Could she truly navigate this precarious path? As Mia left, a final question lingered in Maya's mind. Would she become the heroine this company needed? Or would she be drawn into a battle far darker than she had anticipated? With a sense of impending confrontation, Maya left the cafe, acutely aware that the true test of her leadership had only just begun. The stakes were higher than ever, and soon she would need to confront Mark head-on. But the thought terrified her. The time had come to face her greatest adversary, and the truth she unraveled could change everything. Maya stepped outside, the cool air a sharp contrast to the warmth of the cafe. The day loomed before her, a blank canvas splattered with the hues of anxiety and determination. As she walked down the street, her mind raced with the enormity of the challenge ahead. The significance of Mia's revelations weighed on her like a lead cloak, but within that weight lay an unusual spark of resolve. Instinctively she reached for her phone, her fingers trembling as she began composing messages, her mind oscillating between urgency and caution. The strategy would require careful assembly, the right people convinced that change was essential. Maya envisioned a core team, professionals who not only believed in her vision, but possessed the courage to act. Brittany, she muttered, recalling her colleague's fierce loyalty. Brittany had an unyielding grit and seemed to revel in confrontations. She would be essential. But could she be trusted to grasp the full scope of intrigue? Doubt crept in, but Maya swallowed it down. As she reached her office, an unexpected confrontation awaited her. Mark stood by her desk, arms crossed, a scowl etched upon his face. "We need to talk, Maya. The board wants answers about your latest proposals." The challenge in his voice crackled with a familiar tension. "Answers about what, specifically?" she responded, feigning ignorance while her heart thrummed with adrenaline. This was not just a discussion, it was a power play, and she would not yield. "Don't play coy, you know what I mean. We've been making progress here and suddenly you decide to stir things up." Mark's lips curled into a smirk. He believed he had the upper hand. Challenging his authority, Maya straightened her shoulders. "I'm creating opportunities that align with our long-term vision, Mark. Not all you're advocating for is what the company needs, and deeper motives are at stake here." "You think you can take me on?" he snapped, the edge of his voice slicing through the air. "I think I need to get clear on your motives." Maya shot back, her pulse racing, not just from the potential clash, but from the thrill of asserting herself. Mark's eyes darkened, a shadow crossing his features. "You're playing a dangerous game, Maya. Keep your head down." Unyielding, she retorted. "Or what? I'll be silenced. I refuse to walk the line, fearing your recklessness." For a brief moment, they locked gazes, and in that suspended exchange, Maya recognized the precarious nature of her defiance. Was she pushing too far too soon? The confrontation invigorated her, Yet the question of consequence lingered. What would it mean to stand alone if allies remained invisible? After Mark stormed off, frustration mingled with exhilaration. She felt exposed but liberated, a duality that propelled her forward. As she settled into her work, revisiting the parameters of her initiative, she knew time was of the essence. She needed to gather her allies while carefully drafting her lines of attack. Preparing for the next step would be critical. She could not only fight back, she could carve a path that would inspire a shift within the organization. In the privacy of her office, she began to draft an email to Brittany, outlining the dangers and potential allies. A sense of purpose steeled around her. Could she turn this awakening into something transformative? But the lingering thought of Mark's threat clung to her like a shadow. Just how far would he go to protect his interests? With each minute that passed, the stakes escalated. Maya needed to be ready, not just to defend, but to act on the knowledge Mia had shared. The next move was crucial, but could she navigate the labyrinth Mark had created without losing herself? With an exhale, she prepared to plunge deeper into the fray. A sudden ping from her phone interrupted her thoughts. It was Mia, a simple message. "Urgent meeting tonight. I have more information that changes everything." Maya's stomach nodded. What could it be? Would it solidify her determination or tilt the scales against her? Maya arrived at Mia's apartment, anxiety churning in her stomach like a tempest. The weight of uncertainty was both invigorating and intimidating, pressing against her as she climbed the stairs. This meeting could redefine her trajectory, expose deeper layers of corruption within the corporate structure, or it could open a Pandora's box that might implode her ambitions. Mia opened the door, her face a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Thanks for coming on such short notice," she said, ushering Maya inside. The dimly lit living room felt intimate yet charged, as if it held within it the energy of 1,000 unsaid truths. "What's going on?" Maya asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Mia gestured for her to sit as she took a deep breath, her gaze darting to the window as if seeking the right words from the city outside. "It's more than just Mark selectively undermining your insights. I've managed to gather intel from multiple departments. There are plans for a restructuring of the company that you and I absolutely need to be ready for." Maya felt a pulse race through her, her heart pounding against her chest. "What kind of restructuring? Is it linked to the hidden agenda you mentioned before?" "Yes," Mia replied, her eyes fierce with determination. "They're strategizing to cut off any potential new projects that could lead to diversification in favor of maintaining existing stagnant partnerships. You could become a target if they see you as a threat to their plans." The depth of Mia's disclosure sharpened Maya's focus. Fear could no longer be a barrier. It had to become a motivator. "So what's the plan? We swamp them with evidence? We need to establish a coalition." Mia nodded approvingly, her energy igniting Maya's inspiration. "We gather a team that hasn't signed off on the unyielding compliance to Mark's vision. As we do that, we can compile our findings on the risks associated with their stagnation. If we outline the path toward a visionary future, they may not have a choice but to listen." Maya leaned forward, her excitement overcoming her initial trepidation. "We can showcase the profitability of innovation. It's everything we've fought for, encapsulated in a framework that they can't ignore. A presentation so compelling they'd have to reconsider." "Yes, and we'll include examples from the market that highlight missed opportunities," Mia added, enthusiasm pulsing in her voice. Together, a synergy sparked between them, an understanding that they were each other's wings. Meetings with stakeholders, outreach to supportive executives. "This will require strategy," Maya asserted, her confidence surging. "But with focus, we could turn their missteps into our roadmap." As they turned ideas over, plans rolled out in rapid succession, seeds of fortitude taking root within the rapidly evolving corporate culture. Each decision became a stepping stone, producing an almost palpable sense of empowerment. In this intimate convergence of minds, the weight of the previous battles felt lighter, and the fears that had haunted Maya began to dissipate. Maya glanced up at Mia, realization dawning. "We need to organize a pre-meeting with the key players who will advocate for this change." Every word ignited a strategy in her mind, the energy weaving threads of potential success. "Absolutely." And then we'll propose a town hall meeting for the whole team. We have to get everyone involved, significant stakeholders from inside the company, not just the board. Exactly, Maya stated, her eyes shining with determination. We'll make this a movement, not just an initiative, a reawakening. As evening turned to night, her resolve crystallized. She was no longer just a challenger within a corporate maze. She was harnessing the very essence of her vision, reclaiming authority over her narrative. Yet as every plan unfurled, the specter of Mark remained, a constant reminder of the stakes. With a newfound clarity, Maya recognized that her success hinged on her ability to navigate the intricacies of self-assurance while dismantling his long-standing alliances. It was evolving beyond righting wrongs. It was a fight for transforming the very fabric of the organization. Maya and Mia drafted messages, summoning allies into the fold. This wasn't just her battle anymore. It was the moment of reclamation for every voice, silenced by fear. She felt a surge of urgency coming together within her as they constructed their narrative. This was more than a resolve. It was a revolution of her own identity. In the days following their meeting, Maya steeled herself for confrontation, readying for the town hall that would draw focus to the blatant discrepancies lurking within their corporate culture. This was a moment she had long fastened to her dreams, a culmination of her labor, passion, and above all, the legacy she was destined to reclaim. As she stood before the waiting audience, a rush of memories flooded her thoughts. Every doubt, every fear melted into purpose. The restless whispers of her upbringing echoed in her chest, breathing life into her words. Today, we are not here to attack the idea of progress. We are here to collectively embrace it, she began, her voice piercing through the murmur of uncertainty and weaving a tapestry of changes that would rip through complacency. There's no room for marginalization in our company, not anymore. We owe it to ourselves, each other, and the very fabric of this organization to confront what has been buried beneath layers of denial if we are to transform our future. Silence enveloped the room, every eye locked in intense focus. What had begun as trepidation transformed into an undeniable force ready to emerge, a quiet confidence that thrummed within her. As questioning began to roll in, Maya endured the tempestuous critiques, meeting each with evidence that bolstered her position. Together with her team, they dismantled Mark's objections and steered the conversation toward understanding and growth, transforming skeptical faces into thoughtful ones. When the meeting finally concluded, the applause felt like a tidal wave crashing over her, affirming her journey. She had stood resolutely before them, not only presenting evidence but emerging as the dynamic leader she had sought to become. In that moment, she did not just reclaim a title. She found her authentic self, rooted deeply in truth and transformation. The journey was just beginning. Maya would face ongoing challenges, but the victory felt solidified within her. The ephemeral grip of fear loosened, replaced by an invigorating recognition of her growth, a profound understanding that her voice had not only mattered, it had made waves. With her allies rallying behind her, she now held concrete plans to part the curtain shrouding their organization, unveiling potential that had been suppressed for far too long. The roots of her father's wisdom entwined in her heart, as she steered bravely toward the horizon of change. Rising from shadows to light, Maya empowered those around her to conquer their own battles. The air hummed with possibilities, each pulse of her newfound strength echoing the legacy she aspired to foster within her reach. So it was that Maya Johnson had not merely changed her own narrative, but had become an architect of a future where fairness led the way. The journey had laid bare the paths of truth, demonstrating that her fight was not just hers to win. It became a clarion call for eminence across generations. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and let's keep this momentum going together. Comment below your reactions and theories about Maya's transformation. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion, because transformative stories deserve to spread. Don't wait even one more second to support the continuation of stories that matter.